Morning, everybody. We will call to order the May 20th Transportation Policy Board meeting. Welcome to all our members and guests. Obviously, I am not Mayor Freddie O'Connell. He is at a press event for the Super Bowl. A big deal if you haven't heard. I know we have a few other board members at a County Services Association conference as well. At this time, we will seek for a motion to approve the minutes from the April 15 meeting. I have a motion. I have a second. Any edits to the minutes? Seeing none. All those in favor of the minutes being approved, say aye. Aye. Minutes are approved. This time we'll have an opportunity for public comment. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to make any general comments? None. We'll go on to our action items. Action item 3A, amending a transportation improvement program. And Mr. Carroll will start us off with this.
Good morning, Chair and members of the board. If you haven't met me yet, I'm Connor Carroll. I'm the TIP coordinator here at GNRC, and I have 5 amendments to the TIP program that are being approved today. The first 2, TDOT awarded congestion mitigation and air quality CMAQ funds, a program administered by FHWA, to 2 of our local agencies. Congratulations to Williamson County Government and TMA Group, as well as the City of Franklin's Franklin Transit Authority. Williamson County Government and TMA Group got $332,000 federal dollars of CMAQ funds, and City of Franklin's Franklin Transit Authority got $492,000 of federal CMAQ funds. The next project is East Nashville Spokes. The amendment shifts $200,000 in federal surface transportation block grant STBG funds from construction to PEN. It also adds $9.3 million in active transportation infrastructure investment program ATIP discretionary funds, as well as $4.2 million in local funds. The next amendment is Metro Nashville's Opry Mills multi-use path. It adds $11.3 million in federal transportation alternative program TAP funds awarded by TDOT in December of last year, as well as updates the description to include the TAP eligible activities. And the last one is McEwen Drive widening phase 4. It adds $1.4 million in federal TAP funds, also awarded by TDOT in December of last year. And that's all 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Board voting members, do we have any questions for staff on the 5 proposed amendments?
You did that.
Well, we're going to open a public hearing first. So are there any interested parties in addressing the board regarding the proposed amendments? Close the public hearing, and now we'll take the motion and a second. Motion and a second. All those in favor of approving Resolution TPB 2026-08, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? There are none. Action item 3B, the TIP call for projects. This will be Mr. McDonald.
All right, thank you. So we are to the right side there. We are formally requesting that you open up a TIP call for projects, and I'll give you a little bit of a background. This is really a continuation of the end of the RTP that we've been doing for the last year and a half, asking you a lot of questions, getting a lot of feedback from your staff. As you know, we adopted a new TIP in November of 2025, and we included the extending the horizon of the TIP through 2029. We removed program funds. They don't carry over if they've already been programmed into the new TIP. And we carried forward unobligated funds from the last TIP. We aligned the TDOT projects with the 10-year plan, and we added funds to regional groupings. But what we did not do is include any of programming any of the new projected MPO sub-allocated funds for locally managed or locally sponsored projects. So that's what we're doing here. Anything that's new funds or new projects that you would like to see in the TIP from 26 to 29, that's what we're asking for today. So we have about approximately $149 million of these formula grant funds sub-allocated through the remainder of this new TIP cycle from FY27 to 29. And what we're looking for is to cover cost increases on current projects that are already obligated. So you've moved to a new phase in the project, or you're upcoming on construction or right of way, and you find that there's a significant or any increase at all. We want to capture that request. Make sure that the next phases that are in this TIP cycle are covered, and add new projects that you may have submitted to the RTP, but had not been programmed yet into the TIP. So we're also going to look back on the current existing projects that are carried over and make sure that they are on track to be obligated. So, you know, and this is a request to you all to say, hey, here's a real timeline for our project during the next 4 years, basically. So I want to emphasize that this should not be, I don't want to encourage any anxiety here. This should be a fairly simple look at what is already existing in the TIP, and it's updates that you already know about. So we want updated cost estimates. We've been asking for this information for a year. A lot of things have changed with cost estimates and project timelines for your existing projects. New projects, as I mentioned, that you submitted to the RTP that need programming during this timeline because you know they're going to start. We want you to ensure that the local match is identified, and we're going to ask you to demonstrate project readiness. And that's basically just saying, hey, we got to this next phase, or here's the reason that we believe we're ready to continue. So some justification about feasibility, because this is where the rubber meets the road, as it were, to really allocate funding. And then candidate projects, new projects from the set-aside programs, the groupings that were not spelled out previously. So our Safe and Active Streets program that supports safety and active transportation elements, transportation technologies, highway safety improvements, bridge repair replacements. All those are things for potentially new projects that you can submit. Again, if you know they're ready to go. And then additionally, we'd like to hear about any regionally significant projects that may be fully locally funded too. Those should be in the TIP. But absolutely, if there's federal funding being requested. So again, trying to make this as simple as possible. If you don't have an understanding of where that project is going to move forward on the implementation timeline, we're going to ask you to wait on that, because we want to make this a clear and straightforward process. If you can't document that the local match is secured, or if the projects are not consistent with the RTP, we're eligible for a set-aside grouping in the RTP. So each project, if we're talking about the new projects, they need to match RTP projects or groupings. So again, to ease any anxiety about this, I think this is a really exciting process improvement. We plan to do this every year. So we will be, instead of waiting and having a big rush every 3 to 4 years, we'd like to do this again next year at this time, and it'll keep our TIP much more updated. We'll say, how have your projects progressed? What's your new timeline? What are your new funding needs? So around this time the next year, we'll do the same thing. So if you're not ready to submit this now, you will have another chance in a relatively near future. And really quickly on the timeline, we presented this and kind of opened up our application, which I'll show one slide of in a second, at the May 6th meeting. so your TCC members, your staff members should be aware of this. And we're asking you today to formally issue that call for projects, but hopefully they've been looking in the system and working on that, checking on the current projects. We'll present that candidate list at the next TCC meeting on June 3rd. And any revisions or requests that come out of that draft presentation will be due on June 12th. We'll get the package of proposed amendments. This is going to be a large TIP amendment process and package, and open it up to public comment review with the TCC review and endorsement on the July meeting, and we'll have it adopted here in the July meeting as well. So last slide on this, many of you may be familiar with the NAC tool that we use. It's a database tool. This was presented in depth to the TCC, and we held a workshop. Many of your staff attended that, and we'll have more in the coming week and 2 weeks to finalize this. But I want to make the point that the information that you've given us and that we've worked with you all on through the last TIP adoption, through the RTP adoption, is all populated in there. So if nothing has changed, it's as easy as going in and checking and saying, that looks good. If timelines and funding needs have changed, it can be input into that system. So thank you all for those of you whose staff have started working on that. There is at the link at the bottom there, bottom right, gnrc.org/app/tip tracker. There is a video available, kind of a tutorial video of the workshop that we did showing it. But as I always like to remind everybody, we are always open for one-on-one meetings to help work through any issues you have or questions or anything like that you have on it. So with that, I will turn it back to the chair and see if there are any questions.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Are there any questions from the members for staff?
Question, just to clarify or to verify, if a application is submitted, if we have 7 days to get it in, is that correct?
And
Quick turnaround.
and I want to speak to the optics of that, right? And just reemphasize something that Daniel said earlier. We're actually just asking you to update what you submitted to us beginning last January, right? So these are projects already on your radar, but since we haven't looked at the short term of those projects in a few months, just asking you to make sure that that is realistic.
Share with everyone where what exactly is the documentation that you're needing on those local funds to ensure that they get appropriated, because a letter on the letterhead may not be sufficient.
We can just, we'll share the screen and show you what we're asking for so you can see it real time.
And so I know that the text is a little small. Let me see if I can zoom in a bit. So this is the live version of the interface right now. I won't do a deep dive onto it, but like I said, we can do one-on-ones with you. You do have to have a user login. Will help you get this set up. A lot of the staff already have done that. I'll just pull up an example project here. At a high level, there's descriptive elements at the top of the screen. In most cases on existing TIP projects, like if you need new funds for a project that is already in progress, you will not be making changes here, but you can. You can go in and revise the project details. I get signed in here, sorry. And you can say, like, here's what the name was, here's what we want it to be. There's a description, link. You can change the description here. There's always kind of a by part. You can see what it was and what you would like it to be throughout. But to get specifically to the question, at the bottom, there is what is already in the TIP, what is already programmed. And at the beginning, there's a duplicate line. It looks exactly the same, but this is that same split where you can see what you'd like it to look like. So for instance, if this project won't move to construction in 2026, you can go in and you can go in here and you can change that line. You can, let's see, you can go ahead and drop down and change that to a different year. You can add new phases, but specifically there's a question down at the bottom about required documentation. At a high level, it asks you, are you ready to obligate soon? And is there a match that's somehow documented? And there's just a field where you can provide support on that. At a high level, that's descriptive. If for some reason you'd like to upload an attachment, you can do that down at the bottom in the project notes field. I don't know if that answers your question fully. Are they good?
Well, I think I'll expand on what's required to prove you have local match. Just right now, you're a statement letting us know that, where the match is. We do have programming policies in the tip that would require proof of match within a certain period of time of the project those funds actually being programmed. At this stage, we're not trying to create bottlenecks for you to give us the good information. So just let us know, and we'll come back later if we're going to program the funds for you and ask for that more detailed proof of match. Does that answer your question?
Local resolution or.
Yeah, or a letter signed by the mayor. I did acknowledging that it's in the budget, so on and so forth. And
I think that's probably maybe the level of documentation that you may be looking for is an official resolution or ordinance or your assigned fund balance notating that amount was specifically set aside for a surface transportation block grant. And no disrespect to here, but a simple letter from the mayor saying, yeah, my council's good for $300,000 may not wash by the time you get down to that. So when it's been appropriated and a vote's been taken, and then, people change and offices, projects take a while. So we've discussed this before. It seems like you're better off. You can show it, proof of it in a budget, in a line item, in a resolution ordinance. It's always best to have that identifier that has been voted on by your commission or local council.
I don't disagree with the strength of documentation in the form of a formal resolution. Our policies just require, though, that you provide proof. So like if you are going to use a letter, you will need to cite the capital improvement budget or the annual budget where that money is actually budgeted. So, and we don't see all these pieces of document equal, right? A formal resolution from the local legislative body is going to be higher up on the order of significance than the simple letter, as you mentioned, Mayor. But just to be clear, we're not requiring that letter or that documentation right this second. That'll be something that we require within the timeframes associated with the TIP policies and the document that was adopted in November.
What other questions do we have for the staff? There are none. What we'll look for is a motion to formally open the call for projects. Motion? And a second?
Second.
And a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Item is approved. Item number 4 are informational items today. We're going to start with the Transportation Planning Work Program and Mr. Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the Transportation Policy Board. So this is again an informational item. So you'll see some action on this in about 2 months, but I'll kind of let you know what's going on and what we're looking for from our partners here. So you've probably seen some of these slides before. I'll do a little bit of clarification on the front end, but just to ease any ambiguity, you may see this document, the Transportation Planning Work Program, referred to in 2 ways. Kind of the federal language is Unified Planning Work Program, the UPWP, but internally or here we refer to it as the Transportation Planning Work Program. So if you hear me slip into UPWP or any of us do that, it is the same document. What is it? So there are kind of 3 core MPO required documents at the federal level. The TIP and the RTP are short and long range plans, mostly focused on capital projects. The UPWP is actually the planning element that we are required to document at the federal level. There are a few different focuses here, and you'll see these on the screen. But one of them is just to encourage coordination on regionally significant planning around the region. So this is projects that you are working on that may be relevant to everybody else, and it is to encourage coordination regionally on those projects where needed. The other aspect of the Transportation Planning Work Program is actually a document that helps program the funds that are received federally for planning at the MPO level, so PL funds and 5303 funds. So this actually allows us to use those funds for planning projects. So that said, we do update this. It's a 2-year outlook. We did update this last year, so we're doing kind of an incremental update right now. We've been asking people to provide new information or new requests. So got my slides. There we go. So what is in there now? So I'm going to show you, you've seen these slides last year, but what you'll notice is there are additions. There's some blue text on the screen that'll show you things that we have collected so far. If you have a project, well, right now I'll show you GNRC projects. I'll show you regional partner projects in a moment, but if you have other projects you think should be shown, that is what we're asking for. Ongoing activities, we've just finished the RTP update about a month ago. You just heard about the tip call for projects. So those activities are ongoing. Safe Streets for All, action planning. We're kind of still working with federal partners to get that moving. New projects, you'll see us working on things like the freight study, the airport accessibility study, and a greenway study or regional greenway study in the upcoming year. We have added at the request of Metro Nashville an ITS architecture update. We did something similar, I believe it was 2020 or 2021, trying to make sure that like smart signals and things like that are all integrated on similar standards, especially with the Choose How You Move updates that are happening. There's been a request to take another look at that just to make sure that everything is being coordinated there. And then looking at partner activities. So those are the GNRC activities that I've listed. Generally speaking, these have been grouped into 4 categories. I'll show you 3 on one screen and then 1 on another. But major plan updates, roadway safety planning, transit or transit demand management planning, and kind of corridor or sub area studies. So you see a list of these here, things that are happening regionally. We did add a Spring Hill major plan update to the list. And then additionally, we have added in the corridor or sub-area studies, a number of studies for Metro Nashville or Thompson Station, focusing on specific corridors or specific areas. I'll pause for a moment because I know there's a lot on the screen if you'd like to skim through it. Thank you. Yes. So, well, like I said, this is information today. We have that call for new studies and planning activities. Formally, it has closed, but if you do have other information, we'd love to still get that. We will be bringing this to TCC in July to formally adopt this, and then to TPB in July 15th.
Thank you. We have questions from the group. I'll just go ahead and emphasize that this is an informational item. No actions being requested until July. So certainly if there's any additional planning efforts between now and July that need to be considered, please reach out to staff and coordinate on those. All right, our informational item B, regional analysis of bridges and structures, will be Mr. McDonald again.
All right, so I'll introduce Kevin to do a presentation on this. This will kind of be a meat of our informational items today, but we've been asked from a lot of board members about the structures and bridge program, and how do we prioritize the needs of our bridges. So we took a deep dive on this during the regional transportation plan process. We had Kimberly Horn study the bridge conditions and forecast out conditions and potential how much we would need to put into the system to keep it at certain conditions, which is what all the presentation will be about. So great baseline setting project. TDOT has offered to have some of their bridge folks come in, and so we'll have that at a later date to kind of talk about, okay, how do we move from understanding the bridge needs to working with TDOT and coordinating with them about how they prioritize funding for their bridge programs. With that, I'll turn it over to Kevin to present on our research.
Thanks, Daniel, and thanks for your time. Good morning. So I don't know if you guys will recall or not, I was here about a year ago to talk about asset management. And if you guys will recall, I used the analogy of a car to talk about asset management. So, how many of you get the oil changed in your car on a regular basis? I hope everyone does, right? And every time you get your oil changed, you don't really notice a tangible benefit in your car. It doesn't operate any differently. But if you don't change the oil in your car, what happens? You're going to blow an engine and it's going to cost a lot of money, right? And so our transportation system is the same way, is that we need to continually invest in the maintenance of our transportation system, even though it may not, show an immediate or tangible benefit. But the consequences, if we don't, we're going to spend a lot more later on in rehabilitation and or replacement. And so that was sort of the overall message that we gave last time. Today, we're going to actually zero in on one aspect of asset management, and that is bridges and structures, or generally. So those are an integral part of our transportation system. We use them every day. On the short drive over here from my office, I think I counted 6 structures that I drove over. You don't really notice that they're there, but if we don't maintain them and they fall apart, then we really notice it. It could, range from being a significant inconvenience of a bridge closure to a major catastrophic event. And so it's critically important that we maintain our structures. So quick question for you. When we think about the 7-county MPO region, how many structures, bridges, and culverts do you think there are? You want to take a guess?
5,210.
That was an oddly specific number. A little bit high. So there are just over 3,200 structures in the 7-county MPO region, and it's about evenly split between bridges and culverts. And those are distributed throughout every city and county in the region. Here is a spatial look at those structures. So the structures that are on state facilities are there in red. You can see those are not quite half, between 40 and 50% of every structure in our 7-county region. Surprisingly, counties maintain more infrastructure for structures than the cities do. So they have just over a third. The cities in green have about a fifth, and then there are a small amount of other ones that are maintained by other entities. Like, I don't know if you saw that streak of orange there through Davidson, Williamson, and Murray County. You want to know what that is?
Just trace.
That's the trace, exactly. So, and that's maintained by the Park Service. Data is collected annually on bridges, so we have a really good set of data. We have a really good understanding of our current structure network, and so one of the things that we look at is age. And so, as you can see there, bridges, like most of our surface transportation, is what's called legacy infrastructure, which means we've built the majority of our bridge infrastructure was built over 50 years ago. And so as it ages, it just becomes the necessary maintenance and upkeep of those structures becomes increasingly important. So in addition to age, we can also track condition of structures. And so there's a rating system. And so the bridge engineers, and I've got one of my partners here, Jonathan, who is an actual bridge engineer who will probably be able to answer some of your questions later. They evaluate structures on a regular basis. So we have a good understanding of our current system. And it's on a scale from 1 to 9. Culverts are pretty simple. There's just one rating. Bridges, there are 3 different evaluations. And the score for a bridge is the lowest of those 3. So as you can see there, it's a structure, deck, or superstructure. Whichever is the lowest of those is the bridge rating. And so we did take a look at structures across the 7-county region. And so as you can see, culverts are they're easier to maintain. So they're in a little bit better condition than bridges, but overall we're in pretty good shape. So majority of the structures in our region are either in good or fair condition. And you can see that if you look at the map, it might vary a little bit from place to place. Some places you might see a little more yellow and red than others. We won't call anyone out. We're not going to city shame anyone here today, but it could vary across the region. So this is looking at it by ownership, and as you can see, it's pretty consistent across the board when we look at state versus county versus city. So as a region, collaboratively, we've done a good job of maintaining our bridge infrastructure. So we did take a look back at some historic data to see, how we're trending, and we're generally staying about the same, which means we've been consistently maintaining our bridges. Maybe a little bit of a change over the 12-year period, or I'm sorry, the 6-year period, but not significant. I think we've done a good job of maintaining the bridge condition. Now, much like other elements of our transportation network, the Federal Highway Administration requires us to maintain performance targets for structures. And so in the case of structures, it's structures on the national highway system only. So our major road system, and it's the percent of deck area in good condition and in poor condition. So those are the targets. And so for the region, it's you can see that it's 45% and is in good condition and 7% in poor condition. And we currently meet those targets. Oh, okay, yeah, thank you. So that's a quick snapshot of the current system. We also took a look ahead at, what are the future conditions and needs, and what level of investment is going to be necessary to maintain structures in good condition. So to do that, we used software that the Federal Highway Administration and USDOT helped develop called the National Bridge Inventory and Analysis System and BIAS. And it's effectively just a model that looks at every bridge and the condition, and then it uses a series of algorithms to determine for a given set of for like a certain dollar amount, what's the best way to spend that money. And it looks at three types of improvements. One is improving a bridge, replacing a bridge or structure, or what's called maintenance, rehabilitation, and repair, MR&R, which is a more intense version of improvement, more or less. And so it effectively looks at each individual structure, all the 3,200 structures that we told you about, and then decides how to best spend our money, and then what that will get us in terms of bridge condition. So we looked at a handful of scenarios for the region just to get a sense of what the investment needs might be. And so one scenario, we'll run through these, but we looked at what would it take to maintain current conditions. So we showed you data on current conditions. How much investment would it take to keep that same condition to the year 2050? So a 25-year look forward. What's it going to take to meet our TDOT performance targets that we just shared? If money were no object, and of course we know it is, but if it were no object, what would an unconstrained, how much would it cost to maintain a perfect system? What would happen if we didn't fund it at all? And then we also did, just for you locals, we did a separate scenario that looked at local structures only and the cost to maintain those. So again, just to remind you, when we say maintain current conditions, 95% of the structures in our region are good or fair, or what we say not poor. And so that's what we're shooting for. How much is it going to take to hit that 95, keep that 95% target over the next 25 years? So I'm going to get a little bit nerdy on you for a minute. This is a chart, and what it shows, the numbers at the bottom are progressively higher levels of investment over the next 25 years. So you see that first number is 335 million. So the software said, okay, if we were to spend $335 million over the next 25 years, what would that get us? And as you can see, that will get us to about 95%. And remember, our target is, it would get us to 90%, and our target is 95%. So 335 million isn't going to quite get us there. If we were to spend $1 billion, it would get us to about 94% either good or fair, which isn't quite there. It would take double that amount, 2 billion, before we cross the 95% threshold, which is where we are now. And as you can see, we just spent $1 billion trying to get from 94 to 95%. That probably doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? It's more nuanced than what this chart is showing. We'll get more to that in a minute, but it probably doesn't make a lot of sense to spend another $1 billion just to move the needle 1%. This is another way of looking at the data. So this is that same level of investment. You see the numbers across the bottom are the same. What's on the vertical though, this is backlog. So these are the number, this is the dollar amount of need that the software sees at different levels of investment. So if we keep investing money, it will take about $2.2 billion to eliminate all of our needs over the next 25 years. So if we wanted to have a completely perfect system where there is no more need, it's going to take $2.2 billion of investment. And the truth will lie somewhere there in the middle, of course. No worries. All right. So we talked about performance targets. So it's the percent of NHS deck area in good and fair condition. So our target is 93%. And what's it going to take to hit that target? And so what's interesting is the software, you can continue to invest. And there's a point where, no matter how much you invest, you're probably not going to hit that complete target. And that's just the nature of the beast in terms of the condition of those bridges. But it would take about $1.6 billion to achieve 91%. And after that, the software basically says no matter how much you invest, you're probably not going to get above that. And you'll notice that's quite a bit of the total investment amount that we showed you earlier. That's because the bridges, the structures on the national highway system are among the largest and most complex, and so they're going to require the most amount of resources to maintain. And here's that same chart that we showed before. Once you get to about the $1.4 billion, then you've got most of that backlog eliminated. That's what we were referring to. No matter how much you spend past a certain amount, you're probably not going to completely eliminate all the need. So we talked about local structures. This is about 96% of local structures are in good or fair condition. What would it take to maintain that? And again, the local structures are much more simple, smaller facilities. So the level of investment is not nearly enough. So as you can see there, it's only going to take about 124 million over the next 25 years to hit our target to maintain current conditions on local structures only. So a lot of the spending is going to be on state facilities. And that's, looking at the backlog again. So here's a quick breakdown of those 5 investment scenarios that we talked about. So if we want to try and maintain current conditions perfectly, it's going to take about a $2.15 billion investment over the next 25 years. Looking just at our NHS structures to hit our TDOT targets, our performance targets, it's going to take a little over $1.5 billion. Unconstrained, if we were to try and get the system as perfect as possible, just a little bit more, $2.2 billion. Of course, no investment, we're not spending anything. And then the local, again, it's only 124 million, so significantly less than the system as a whole. And then these are the performance outcomes. So as you can see, if we invest nothing in our bridges over the next 25 years, they're all going to fail. So that's definitely, I think, a situation that we want to avoid. But everything else at the level of investment is acceptable. So now you're probably wondering, well, how much money do we actually have to spend? Because everything I've said up to this point is hypothetical. So let's take a look at our available revenues for maintaining bridges. So this is from the RTP that we just went through. This is so there is a program for bridges, the Bridge Formula Program, and the forecast for this region over the next 25 years is $807 million. And if you recall, what we just talked about is it's going to take a little over $2 billion to perfectly maintain current conditions over the next 25 years. So that's a pretty big difference. But what you'll see, though, is that the 807, that'll get us pretty close. Remember, we talked about you're going to spend a lot of money getting from 94% to 95%. And this rings true. So we think 807 million will get you there. It'll get you close enough. You don't have to spend another $1 billion, to get perfect. And this is what it would look. When I said it's a little more nuanced, this is what I was referring to. So the chart on the left, that is the current bridge condition. So 55% good, 40% fair. The software estimates if we invest $807 million in our structures over the next 25 years, the good will go down to about 16%, but the fair will be 76%. So we're still in the same ballpark of quality. Overall, 93% of our structures will be either good or fair. So there is a little bit of degradation. It's a little nuanced, but it's still pretty good. So what this tells me is that there's not a lot of fat in that 807 million, that's going to be just enough to maintain our bridges, and that we need to think very carefully about how we invest those dollars. And so I think that's exactly what, Daniel, you were referring to when we're going to invite TDOT in a future meeting to engage in a prioritization process because we need to think carefully about how we spend our money. We have just enough to maintain our current conditions over the next 25 years. So with that, I hope you were informed. You can bring some new information to the dinner table tonight, and I'll turn it over to see if you have any questions.
While you're thinking of questions, I'll note if you haven't found it already, the asset management system performance, which includes the pavement report, is in the packet here for your casual reading.
Another question.
Yeah.
Does TDOT have a similar analysis program? And if they do, how's it compare to what you guys have done?
I'm going to ask my partner, Jonathan, who actually was from TDOT.
Yes,
So
the advice tool that Kevin utilized is also used pretty much across the nation by most DOTs. So it's a pretty popular tool. It's pretty powerful.
Does TDOT do the same exercise though that we did here?
They do in some ways, but they have a much more sophisticated system of tracking the data than what's available nationally. What they submit, they have more information. So they have more detail.
As Okanazawan's always said, he didn't have enough money. So.
Yeah.
Jonathan.
I'm familiar with the TDOT, the biannual reports or inspections that they do for condition assessment of bridges and so on. Anybody that's not familiar with that, I'm going to get a little deep. Sorry, I can't help it. I'm an engineer. That's just what I do. That's part of my personality. So those inspection reports, for anybody that's unaware, is TDOT's federally required to go out and inspect every bridge that's 20 feet or over that they know of. And they do a report on those about every 2 years. And those reports are listed and available on their website. Was the data used for this? Does it take that data into account? Because I'm assuming that's the same data that TDOT uploads into the federal databases.
National Bridge Inventory. I'm going to have to rely on Jonathan again. So yes, it's one of the same.
Okay, it is the same data? Okay.
Yeah. So the data that I presented to you is what's called the National Bridge Inventory. So it's consistent across the nation, the same set of data. So you can go get it for any place.
Okay. And with the condition that you're looking at, so that there's two things too, and I'm going to get a little more nerdy here, is there's structurally deficient and there's functionally obsolescent. Does this look at those separately, or are we just looking at the structural integrity of the bridges?
And Jonathan, you may have to back me up on this. I think that we're moving away from that terminology and that the bridge condition rating system that I shared with you is what is currently being used, although it's still part of the data, right?
It's collected and classified, but this is the direction that they're.
Okay, so we're moving towards this direction. Okay, just kind of an overall holistic look at the bridge.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I think it would be good to, and you mentioned about bringing TDOT in to look at this and help prioritize, which is great. We're going to have to, but I think also maybe trying to correlate our data and study with what TDOT. I mean, I'm sure TDOT's doing something. Then they can't not be doing something because they're the ones who inspect all the bridges. I think correlating those data points together and making sure that we're all on the same page would be great.
Yeah. I think TDOT doesn't have the advantage of being able to take a step back and take a 25-year outlook because they're responding to very near-term and immediate need. I think a lot of their analytical systems are more focused on that.
Okay.
But I think, bridging the two, I think is taking, making near-term decisions with this long-term projection in mind, I think is the great way to approach it.
Kevin, TDOT does have an asset management plan. Like it is something that is being developed and it's been around for a while. So we are taking steps back to see what needs to be done. We understand that there's not enough resources to cover everything, but it is being looked at a data level to make sure that we are getting the higher priority items done first. And I think one of the things that I was going to comment on, I know it says it's a final report, but I talked to our asset management folks when we saw this, and they were not consulted on any of the data that came out of this. So like what Jonathan was saying, if we could coordinate that to make sure that they're aligned. And also if there's a possibility to maybe cite some of the data and the charts and everything that you put in here, because it was something that we could, figure out exactly. We know that the National Bridge Inventory exists, but there was some other stuff in here that we couldn't figure out where the data was coming from.
Okay, sure. Yeah, we'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Mr. Sheriff, I think staff has a couple of kind of key takeaways and perspectives on this. I think there's three things that we want to emphasize. Also just appreciate Kevin and his presentation. Slides are also available online, gnrc.org/slide/TPB. But one is, as it relates to this policy board, there are policy decisions that you make that affect our analysis and our approach to addressing the challenges in front of us. One is the policy that you adopt every year that determines what our targets are for bridge conditions. Historically, we've gone along with the statewide targets that are set by TDOT. But if you have a different perspective on what we should try to be achieving with respect to good and fair versus poor, that's something that's at your discretion to set those targets. The target setting is really important because that is the benchmark that we're trying to grade ourselves against when it comes to evaluating how we're spending our dollars. And so that's the other policy decision that this board has discretion over is we've got the bridge formula funding program, which is dedicated to bridges by federal law that's administered by TDOT. But you also have a share of federal revenues that are suballocated to the region that could be carved out and dedicated to bridges in order to meet those targets that you set locally. So the conversation about target setting is a policy decision that this board meets. Kevin is citing the statewide targets that this board has historically endorsed, but also the policy decision on how we spend the suballocated money that you all share as a region. The third issue, though, is really where you're trying to create an appropriate venue for you to be setting priorities for the way TDOT is addressing the bridge needs within our region. And that would be the subject of the subsequent conversation that we have with TDOT, both on the policy level, but also on the engineering level about, how do we identify what our needs are? Because this aggregate level of data kind of washes out specific needs across the region so that we're addressing the most critical bridge needs across the region from your perspective. Because while, spending an additional $1 billion may only increase you by a percentage point or two, what's really important, though, is that we're not letting bridges fail by taking that sort of aggregate big picture perspective on analysis on bridges. We need your local knowledge and your local input to prioritize bridges for repair and replacement moving forward.
And this is something that we were trying to get our structures division to come and talk about, but there's been a recent rule change that is lowering the bridge ratings on bridges. So the structural integrity of that will be obviously affected if we're lowering the weight limit on some of these bridges on and off system. So a lot to talk about when it comes to the bridge side.
Mayor, one thing I would also say is we're looking at data as it currently exists. You know a lot more about the growth that's happening around these bridges, the additional pressure in terms of traffic volumes and weights that are going to be coming down the pipeline.
Thanks for the report. Go to page 4 of your report that explains two things. First of all, I look at Davidson County now, and I'm qualified. It looks like there is either nothing in the county or nothing in the city in Davidson County.
It's a metro, so it's
Oh,
one county.
yeah, because it's the
Because we are a
consolidated.
city and a county
Yes,
altogether.
You're doing those as a metro.
correct. For Davidson County.
So jump over to the question, and of course, I'm going to do Williamson County. Others may want to know that. As you have, and this is more for math, this is a two-part question. There's money built into highway funds for unincorporated only for bridges.
To the bridge fund. Yes,
And do you happen to know? You don't.
I don't. That's another thing that our structures division could be better served at answering the question.
So in our
Yeah, I don't know
county,
what your question is.
yeah, and then the question I would have that others I would think, as the annexation occurs over the next few years, does that bridge shift from a county back into a city in your modeling?
I would. It depends, I guess, on if it's on and off system. I don't know. I guess I'm not going to speculate. But if it's not on a state system, then That's an.
Well, if you look at just Williamson County, I think I'm looking at 1,525 in the county. We have bridges. So as annexation occurs, we encourage our cities to take over those roads and bridges for this very reason. But that match from TDOT is much more advantageous for a county, which would seem to me if something was going on in Spring Hill, Thompson State, Brentwood, Nolensville, or Fairview, to get them all, that we would partner with them under the county model.
Yeah.
And do some shared revenue and then transfer that back over without penalizing those cities to get those bridges done.
Well, one question is, Kevin, maybe you know, but when you broke these into city and county, was it just based on like a shape file, you know, where it was part of?
No, that's
city
part of
limits?
that's an
county?
attribute in the National Bridge Inventory data. So whatever is reported in that inventory is reported in the
I
data.
would say your answer is if it does get annexed, it would get switched over to this.
No, it's not that easy, but I hear you.
Good. Damn it.
And then my final question is, did you take into consideration the railroad bridges and stuff? Who's responsible for them?
I'm pretty sure those are privately owned. I'm gonna rely again on Jonathan to
Yeah,
confirm that.
The attribute shows the owner. So if the system for the data that he pulled was for state and not private, then it's in this report. If it's privately owned, it's not included.
Couldn't hear it. Repeat that.
Private.
Private.
Correct. The
Private is not
railroad
included.
bridges. Because railroads are privately owned, and so the structures as well. We're not tracking them.
So would
That's
there
not
be
considered
any
in
others other than railroad? Would we be private that I'm not thinking of? Airport terminals, or are they private? Roadways?
Probably depends. Jonathan, do you know?
You know, subdivisions, you know, something, yeah, maybe not something purchased by the developer as part of the lot. But it could later
If it's a
be.
publicly maintained street or road, then the structure would be along with that. But if it's a private facility, then yes, the structure would also be.
So you could have in the terrain in the rural area like Robertson County, you could have a gated community, the roads are private. We have them in Williamson County.
So just for clarification, page 4 is talking about pavement. It's not bridges.
We
So I
would
just-
have culverts inside those gated communities that we can't even get a fire truck in, much less. So they would be responsible, but they would be graded out.
Well, I just want to say those numbers that you're citing are lane miles of pavement,
Okay.
not bridges.
Yes, this document is not just bridges, it is pavement, structures, bicycle and pedestrian facilities. And we're also developing a chapter on transit as well, which you may hear in a future meeting. But yes.
All right, thank you. It's a good discussion, everybody good? Further questions? Again, this was a informational item, but thank you to staff for bringing this to us. We appreciate it. Agenda item 5, our regular reports. We'll start with our TDOT report. Mr. Messervy, are we? Report from you.
Oh. The only report TDOT has is, I think you've heard last week, the final version of the 10-year plan was released that incorporated the additional 400 million that was still up for approval. There were some additional projects added into Middle Tennessee, so obviously we would have to incorporate that into any TIP and STIP documents moving forward. But if there needs to be any more formalized presentation on what the 10-year plan is consisting of, we can do that, but I did not bring any of that with me today. So that's really all I have.
Thank you. Do we have questions for TDOT? Okay, the TCC chair report, Mr. Marston.
A lot of discussion at this month's TCC, and it was really good discussion about the call for projects for tips, the call for tip projects, and really about that technical staff, getting with their elected officials and helping them understand that giving those honest answers in the tip really makes it better for all of us, TDOT included, of getting those obligated for those allocated funds obligated and spent. And just a little additional clarification there is that a lot of times when we submit projects, everybody wants to, it's a big thing to get those projects and get that funding for your community. And we all understand that no one wants to say, no, well, we're not going to need that funding yet, but that's what holds up some bigger projects from moving forward, even sometimes smaller projects from moving forward, is that we think that a project was submitted and said design this year, right away the very next year, construction the very next year, and that's just not realistic in the climate we live in. It doesn't happen that way. So it's really about going back and talking to your technical staff and saying, does what we have make sense? And let's all be honest with everybody and say that if we're not going to make it to construction, we know we're going to, and I'll use an example, Columbia Avenue corridor. We know we're having a hard time with right-of-way acquisition. There's a lot of condemnation, so it's going to stretch out a little bit. So I have to go back and take a look at that and say, do we think we're actually going to get to construction in this tip cycle? I do think we are it's going to be towards the end of the tip cycle, not just that very next year. And it really helps everybody free up funding and helps us get that obligated funding, especially the funding balance that's outstanding spent. So I hope that makes sense to everybody, but the big takeaway is just go back and talk to your technical staff and make sure that they've taken a hard look at anything that's in the tip or needs to be in the tip at those timeframes. It's not a bad thing to say, no, we don't need the funding yet. You're still a prioritized project. You just are saying, free up that money for somebody else. I know it's a hard conversation to have sometimes, but your project's still a priority. That's really all I'd offer.
Great. Thank you. Any questions for TCC? I don't have anything for a chair's report. I know Mayor O'Connell will be back because there's no two Super Bowls, right? Just one. He'll be back in July. Mr. McDonald, I think from a staff standpoint.
Thank you very much. And I'll turn it over to Matthew for the tip status report.
So you do have a more detailed tip status report in your packet. I'll kind of do some high level commentary here. At a high level, you've seen this before, but this report tracks obligations on projects that are in the tip. Just for clarification, the obligation usually occurs when you get to a notice to proceed for a new phase. So if you move from design to right of way or right of way to construction, that is usually when those funds are being obligated. So at a high level, this is tracking how projects are moving through the project delivery process. And what you'll see is the top level number I've shown on the screen here. In this tip period, we are about 14.5% into the timeline, and about 13% of FHWA funds have been obligated. So slightly behind where we would be if it were 1-to-1 with the calendar, but not too far back. I will say it's worth noting that most of the obligations in this period were TDOT projects. There was one local project that was obligated in the last month. That is Lebanon Cedar City Pedestrian Improvements Project Phase 2. It's a design obligation that occurred. And this kind of just feeds into that conversation that Mr. Marston was just referencing, that we're trying to make sure that projects are moving through the obligation cycle so that everyone has access to funds on a useful, practical level. Happy to answer any more questions there, but that is the high level summary.
Questions?
Matthew, real quick, and I know this is a question that probably should have been asked a long time ago, but the goal that you've established is what number? Is it the unobligated balance, or is it the number identified in the tip for your goal?
I'm sorry, I don't know if I follow.
So that you've got a goal of 100%. What number is that goal? What is it based? What are you trying to reach on that number? Is it unobligated balanced, or is it?
So that would be everything that is programmed
in the
would
tip.
be obligated within the tip period would be 100%.
Okay. Because right now you're at about $133 million of unobligated. So 13%, is that?
So this takes the 4-year tip period and says, like, I'll be transparent that this high level number is a pretty, I'm not going to say back of the envelope, but it's a quick summary. There's more detailed analysis we will be doing here, but it takes that 4-year period and just says, are we, by the end of the 4-year period, hopefully we will have obligated 100% of the funds.
It's also just STPG. So I know that this is a full list of all programs.
Yeah, this is everything programmed in the TIP, exactly. Yeah, so this goes beyond SCBG, it has the NHPP, it has transit funding in it as well, although we have a better obligation data on highways side.
Okay. Sorry.
Anything else? There's other,
I'll just review the upcoming meetings real quick. A lot going on as we continue into the summer. We have our regular cycles of Transportation Coordinating Committee in June, and then again in July. As a reminder, we will bring up the TIP package of amendments in the July cycle with the draft in June and the Transportation Policy Board July 15th. In between those, I want to point out we have a lot of committees and roundtables going. We do this feeds a lot of our information work, the Tourist Development Roundtable, Aging Advisory Committee, IT Directors Roundtable, and we've been doing the Public Transportation Roundtable, convening all the local agencies, and that's been a really neat thing to get going with Tom Fox, our Public Transportation Coordinator, in later July. And then, of course, the regional council body in June.
I'll just emphasize that June 17th meeting of the regional council body, that's where we'll be adopting our annual budget, electing officers for regional council, and of course, embedded into that regional council budget is the Unified Planning Work Program that Matthew mentioned earlier is incorporated to that document as well. I wanted to also give congratulations to Jonathan for being reelected as chair of the Transportation Coordinating Committee, and also congratulate Doug DeMasi, the planning director for Rutherford County, for being elected vice chair. And also want to just acknowledge that this may be, unless he elects to come back the day before he retires in July, this may be Jerry's last day as a last MPO meeting as a member of the Transportation Policy Board. I know looking around the table, I came back to Middle Tennessee in 2007 to work with the NPO, and Mayor Anderson, you were around, and I think, Jerry, you're the second most tenured person consistently in their role in this body, and you've been a real joy to work with throughout the years. And just want to acknowledge all the contributions that you've made regionally from White House, and give you an opportunity maybe to address the body before you head out into the sunset.
I've just been appreciative of part of this team and seeing what's happened in Middle Tennessee over the last 14 years. The city manager has been just tremendous growth and amazing. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
That's it for our staff report.
anybody have any other business?
And a little bit of a deja vu all over again, Pam Cordenbrock with Gresham Smith. In light of the previous conversation that y'all had about bridge structures, I just wanted to offer up information that last Friday, the Federal Highway Administration issued a build investment program grant offer. And I'm going to read a little bit. I apologize for that. $3 billion is available for the awards. It's both planning grants as well as bridge project grants. The planning grants are early phases of project development, planning, feasibility analysis, revenue forecasting, and then the bridge project grants are for replacement, rehabilitation, and preservation. So there's information available for that. Like, I'm happy to help you with that. Just so that you know, the planning grant critical deadlines are June 15th, and the bridge projects, if you want to do a replacement, is June 29th. So you have a little bit of a staggering there for planning as well as replacement. So just wanted to offer that in light of the conversation that y'all had.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, I will.
And I'll also mention, when you get the recap email, we always link to the DOT Navigator, which will list all the funding sources available through the US DOT and guidance on how to apply for those funds.
All right, if there's nothing further, we'll stand adjourned until July 15th. Thank you.